I'm Christopher Wesling. I'm in New Zealand, South Island, and I'm here sharing the story of a near-death experience I had when I was 15 years old. I had got myself into the deep end of a school swimming pool, and I didn't have any real swimming skills. I got out of contact with the edge of the pool, and I'd started sinking. It happened very rapidly. As I was sinking, I remember panicking, trying to hold my breath. I couldn't, and at the moment the first mouthful of water hit my lungs, I was gone. I remember afterwards remembering how quickly it seemed to happen, but once I had that water in my lungs, I was gone. I remember travelling down this tunnel of light. It was heading off in front of me around about 30 degrees, and I popped out the other side. And as soon as I popped out, I could see this scene in front of me. It was like there was grass, but it was a different colour. It was more sort of lavendery, purpley, pinky ground, but it appeared like grass. There was a pool of water in front, and once again, it had a different texture to what I'm used to on this physical plane. And there was a gentleman sitting on the other side in the seat. Now, I was inclined to almost go around to walk to him, but it didn't feel to as I started to have that thought. It was like, just stay where I was. And we started communicating. And when he was talking to me to start with, there was no words actually being spoken, which surprised me. It was like it was all happening internally. And it was like whole concepts dropping into my mind in one go. When he gave a sense of greeting, it wasn't like we say hello, how are you? Changing our minds and our perceptions back and forward without words. One thing that struck me the most when I was there was the peace and the calmness of the place. Like, I felt totally at peace, totally safe. It was the most loving environment I knew, which was an interesting experience for me because I'd been brought up in a battered home. My life was quite abusive, and I couldn't have told you what love felt like up until that moment. And when I felt that, for me, it was actually a changing period of my life. Even though it didn't really manifest until much later, it did affect me in the fact that I knew something existed that I'd never felt before. I understood where I was. I understood a bit about what it was like. I understood that this was a doorway and I had a choice at this moment. I could either go forward into this place, and I knew if I did, I wouldn't come back. But I was encouraged to stay where I was, and at one point, I just knew it was time to come back. But up till then, it was like there was a source of knowledge and knowing with the gentleman there, like he knew far more than he was immediately saying. And I knew there was a vast knowledge there, which I didn't immediately tap into at the time. But years later, once I started sharing the experience and coming back and revisiting it, that knowledge pool became available. I find from that period in my life, there was a sense of spiritual awareness came in, but I wouldn't say religious. I wasn't focused on any one religion or anything, but I knew there was more than most people had shared or talked about. And when they talked about spirituality, and they would talk about people going to heaven and what it was like, my experience was that it was quite different. It was a loving, peaceful place. There was no judgment about, whether you go to heaven or hell. There was none of that. It was a place of peace. There was warmth. There was love. There was a sense of understanding. I understood that my life had purpose, and that I was here for a reason, and that there was a purpose in me returning. If I had left then, I knew it wasn't the right time. It was interrupting a plan that I knew was in motion. Having found the sense of plan, I didn't immediately understand what that was about, and it was only many years later when I returned to the experience and started revisiting it that I gained a far deeper understanding of it, which has continued to this day. But at the time, I just knew the sense of depth there. There was more knowledge behind this gentleman than was immediately visible. I had the sense of whatever I wanted to know was available. I just didn't have time to ask it that immediately at that experience. So it was only when revisiting it that I've opened the doorways to what's actually available there. And when I've gone back later on, I find that the gentleman's not there, but now the knowledge and that sense of beyond has become available. And anything we want to know or are curious about is actually available in this consciousness. And it's like the consciousness of everything. When we're passing over, we see what's immediately applicable to us. When we learn to revisit it, we can tap into anything that we wish. And that consciousness is always there. It's always available. And one of the big understandings I have from this experience is there is no end. There is no death. We come into the physical form and we leave the physical form, but we still exist. This place we go to is like the consciousness from which we were born. We sort of come out of that place to inhabit a body, and when we leave the body, we go back there. It's like home. When we're born onto the earth, it feels like a birth here, but it's actually a slowing down of the energy of that which we actually are. When we return, we're going back to the original energy, which is a far more conscious energy than what we are while we're in this physical form. And going from that experience, if I go back before I go too deep into what's there, when I had the feeling to return, I was aware that my body was in a particular situation, and I was aware of it, but I wasn't inhabiting it at that point. And something went into my body and moved it to where it got itself out of the water and over an edge of the pool where my head was down and the water started running out. I was aware there was water running out of the body's mouth, and it was only when there was enough ran out and the body gave a cough that I appeared and felt myself back in the body. Up until that point, I was an observer of the body, of something that was motivating the body, but I wasn't aware of it as me motivating or moving the body. I still have no idea what that was to this day. I'm aware of it. I knew it. And as I say, I only felt the body again once it gave that cough, and there was a jerk of air or a gasp of air back into the lungs. And it sort of hit quite hard when it did. It was quite sharp. So it was quite a raw experience, and I started coughing and choking and more water was coming up. From what I can gather, I must have taken quite a bit in, but it was certainly coming out again. And from that point on, I sort of got myself back and became conscious and just motivated the body and started moving again slowly, taking the time to adjust to where I was. I was still remembering the experience. I didn't know what to make of it at the time because I was still living at home at 15 years old. My thoughts at that time went back to immediate survival of everyday life. So I didn't do a lot with it then. It was only later on when I was 27 years old, I had, how would I describe it? It was a severe injury where I was left with internal nerve muscle damage. I've got a spinal injury, and that experience left me laid up at periods for up to 2 to 3 months, where I had opportunity to start reflecting on life. And it was only then that I started tapping back into the experience and exploring it from there. Nobody had told me I couldn't go back to it, so I never questioned it. I just learnt to go back, and I've been accessing it ever since. To me, it's something that we all have available. It's an aspect of consciousness, the consciousness from which we come. We can learn to tap into it through meditation experiences and revisit it. It's actually part of who we are. The part that inhabits our everyday life called the thinking brain is just one aspect of our consciousness. We have thinking brain, we have awareness, we have consciousness, and two or three aspects, each going deeper than the other one. And it's all a choice. It's all available. I've found nothing there that isn't available to everyone who chooses to explore or investigate it. Everything in consciousness is known, and consciousness knows everything. There is nothing left out. There's two places there I've learned to access, both the Hall of Records and the Akashic Records, and there is a difference between the two. Along with that, I find in consciousness itself, all information is available, and it sort of just floats around. And you realize that everything is made from consciousness, with consciousness, by consciousness. Even our body is an aspect of consciousness, which we come into and then we leave. But the consciousness that inhabits the body is the part of us that goes on. We could call it the soul or anything else that fits each person's understanding. The thing I share with people is the one thing I learned, that we're all here for a purpose. If we're feeling down, which does happen to a lot of people, it's not that there isn't a purpose and there isn't a value in life. It's often that we just haven't found it. And a big part of life, and it may seem the simplest thing, one of the most important things is actually recognizing the beauty in life. And it's through beauty we find a connection with things. It's like when you look in a baby's eyes, you can see the beauty that the baby holds within through their smile, through their innocence, through their openness. And that's how we make contact with that which is worthwhile. There's a saying in the Bible I like. It's, "Come ye as children unto the kingdom of heaven." And it's through those eyes of the children, that sense of innocence, that wide-eyed open wonder, that total sponge effect that babies have, where they just take things in. They're totally open to what's going on. They're totally curious. There's no judgment. And that's where the real learning takes place. It's getting back to that childhood innocence. And once we start finding that, just, recognizing the beauty in a flower, a blade of grass, the wind blowing through our hair, it's the simple things in life, which is where the value lies. It's in that immediate, in-the-moment experience. It's not about impressing people or anything like that. It's just finding the value of that which is worthwhile. To me, the quickest access point for this is the recognition of beauty. And we all have that in ourselves. It's just a matter of learning to see it. It's learning to be in a way that creates beauty in our own lives through gentle words, kind action, compassionate heart, learning to see the value in others. If we get caught up in things like judgment, it disconnects us. It's learning to come back to a connected state, learning how to feel connection with people, with ourselves, and with life itself. And as I say, it's through the simple things, not the complicated things. And that's one thing that I had impressed upon me, which is why I was comfortable coming back, even into the life I was living, which was abusive at the time. That value in life, I knew there was value in it. I didn't know where it was. And it was when I left home that I started looking at life and I started questioning life. I didn't consider myself spiritual. I didn't even know what the term was. I didn't follow any particular religion. I just questioned life. Why do I breathe the way I do? Why do I walk the way I do? Why do I think the way I do? And that has continued right through my life. Once I had the accident in 85 and I got in touch with a spiritualist church, I then got in contact with Theosophical Society. Then I started developing meditation practices, which I've developed and practiced up to 20 now. I still use the original practices of Theravadan Buddhism, Raj Yoga and Vipassana, which are the cause of my practice. And they also help me stay in touch with what I do. I sort of became a counsellor and a therapist, so I work with people from that side. I do have a Facebook page where I put my own writings and philosophies, my understandings of life, so that's available. So if anybody wants, you can contact me on Facebook. I've got 2 pages, my everyday page and this Facebook page with my own writings. I do have a YouTube channel, but it's more a personal one, but there is a couple of video interviews on there already for those who are interested, and this one will go there when it appears as well. There's various ways people stay in touch with me. I've done talks, workshops, some on near death, some on what the other side is. I've done psychic readings for people. I have done some readings for people in the spiritualist church. I've left that many years ago, but I still have people that contact me for various reasons. Some for psychic development, some for readings, some for just help and understanding with loved ones that have passed over. I don't do it a lot, but I do it when I feel called and when it feels appropriate.